Well, good morning, and I'd like to call to order this Planning and Development Committee to order this morning. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility. You can do so now or when it arises on the agenda. Nothing? Then this morning we have 3 public meetings. The first one is scheduled for 9:30, and it's Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 231 for Teeswater Concrete. And our planner, this one is this one here, this public meeting will be for information purposes only. We'll hear our planner. We'll have the committee an opportunity to question the planner and anybody from the public that would like to comment. Subsequent to this meeting, then, all of those comments will go back to staff and we'll come back with a recommendation at a future date for this particular amendment. So with that, I'll start with the planner, John Gent. He will give the planning report. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. We have a registry here for anyone who's here on this item. I'll just leave it in the front corner of this desk and people can come forward and sign the registry. That'll ensure that they get future notice of meetings. So this is an amendment to an application to amend the county official plan. The agricultural and rural designation of the land would be changed to a licensed aggregate quarry operation. That's the purpose of the application. The site's located in South Bruce Township. It's on Concession 4, the north side of Concession 4, about 4 kilometers southeast of Teeswater. The site is currently, the westerly part of the land is currently cropped agricultural use. It's a Class 1 agricultural land for the agricultural portion of the site. The easterly portion is more of a hazard land environmental feature. The Teeswater River runs along the easterly boundary of the site. There are other extractive operations on the east side of the Teeswater River. This is on the west side. So the site we're dealing with is 40 hectares in area. The area to be licensed is 27 hectares, and the actual extractive area would be 20 hectares. There's about 1.3 million tons of sand and gravel in the site, and the maximum that could be taken in any one year is 200,000 tons. It could be less than that as well. The proposal is to not go within 1.5 meters of the water table. The setback proposed from the environmental features of the site is about 30 meters. The haul routes for the extraction is on Concession 4, about 60% estimated to go west and 40% estimated to go east. There will be progressive rehabilitation of the site over the lifetime of the site, and the slope of the rehabilitated face of the slope is proposed at 3:1. With respect to the provincial policy statement, there are specific policies in the provincial policy that deals with mineral aggregates. These are in the area of the protection of the resource. It's in dealing with the extraction operations of the resource, and it's also deals with the rehabilitation process as well. With respect to the extraction, it says that the extraction is an interim use in the provincial policy statement, and it says that provided the site is returned to what is defined as being an agricultural condition. Agricultural condition is a defined term in the PPS, and it means that for prime agricultural lands, which this is, it'll be restored to a condition that is substantially the same area and the same condition as what it was before the extraction took place. With respect to the Bruce County official plan, there are two designations applying to the area for extraction. There's the agricultural and rural designation that applies to that. And of course, the hazard land designation is just to the east of this. Mineral resources are anticipated in the plan to be located in agricultural and rural areas. And so this change to the plan is contemplated by the plan. In that respect, there's an anticipation that this would be in due course an approved application. Staff did some research about the general operation of pits in the general area. Within 20 kilometers of this site, there are 45 active pits, 6 of which are operated by this applicant, Teeswater Concrete. Within 10 kilometers of the site, there's 18 active pits, 5 of which are operated by Teeswater Concrete. Looked at the duration of these pits. 72% of the pits have been operating for more than 30 years. And the closures of the pits, also we looked at. Since 1990, 6 pits have been closed, and 2 pits in the area that we looked at, the 20 kilometers, have been closed in the last 24 years. So that gives you a picture of the activity of rehabilitation, pits in the area and the rehabilitation of the pits. In summary, there are 2 issues that we've identified that should be looked at. One is the slope of the rehabilitation of the extractive site, the face of the slope. It's proposed at 3-to-1. The concern that we have identified in the report is that a 3-to-1 slope does not lend itself to typical, normal agricultural operations in terms of cropping, which is the current activity. And the material I looked at in terms of standard operating practices for agricultural operations is more like a 10-to-1 slope for some uses, or more, flatter than that. And the other issue is the official plan requires in the policy a 50-meter setback from the hazard lands. Now there's some question as to where the hazard land actually is. The environmental protection zone in the zoning bylaw is not reflective of the official plan designation, and it's contended that it's more accurate. So if we took that as the example, there'd still be, the intent of the plan would be a 50-meter setback from the environmental feature. And right now, the application is for a 30-meter setback. So that's the other issue that we deal with is whether that is an appropriate setback given the policy in the official plan. This matter will be is scheduled to be heard by the South Bruce Council on Tuesday next week, September the 25th. And that is also a public information meeting, public hearing, and we'll get public input from local residents at that meeting. That concludes my presentation.
Does the committee have any questions of the plan of Mr. Gent? Robert?
I'm quite familiar with this area, and this gravel pit, it is going to be beside another large gravel pit. So I do know that they do own a lot of different pits, but Teeswater Concrete, they need quite a variety of aggregates for their cement product. So I think that this pit here, talking to the owner of the pit beside him, that there's a lot more sand, which there is a lack of, a special kind of sand that they mix in the concrete. So this new pit will fill that need for them. And since it is right beside the other pit, I don't see where there's any problem whatsoever with having this other pit there. And as far as that 50-meter setback, we voted and passed at Saugeen Valley to cut down that 50-meter back to 30 meters. And Saugeen Valley, they have no issue with this whatsoever. None of the neighbors have opposed this operation. And I just, as far as the 3-to-1 slope also, this is a company, not an individual that owns this. So I am sure when they put this back to agricultural land, it won't be a 3-to-1 slope. For resale value, since agricultural land is worth so much money, they will make the slope that it is for the farmer, that he can farm it properly. Because if they just leave it at a 3-to-1 slope, it'll bring the value of the land down by quite a bit. So I was just kind of curious of why this is just for information purposes, why this wasn't passed, because they have met everything that they have to do here. So so can I put a motion on the floor that we
I think it'd be inappropriate, Bob. I think the intent was, first of all, I think we need to hear from everybody before we make a decision on this. So this is a public meeting. We should have any member from the public, and we're going to do that very shortly. They should have an opportunity to speak to this issue before we form. I mean, we need to take those issues into consideration before we make a decision. So I think we're following the proper process here. I just have one question, and I think the restoration is part of the approval they get from the MNR. So they need a restoration plan. They approve that plan. Is that my understanding? We don't do that here. So the 3-to-1 slope will be a condition that the MNR would either agree to or not agree to. Is that correct?
The approval is required from MNR, yes.
Thank you. Has the committee any further questions? If not, then thank you, Peter. John, sorry. I apologize, John. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to this application?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Davidson. I'm a planning consultant. I'm here with a couple of representatives from Teeswater Concrete, Jamie Armstrong and Cody Voisin. Appreciate the comments from John and his support for this for the most part. A couple of things, a couple of the issues I will address now. Just starting off with it, it's not a quarry, it is a pit. So the application itself before you today was filed 6 months ago. And we delayed holding off on filing that application because we were also processing an application under the Aggregate Resource Act, so the pit license. That application went through just fine. There's a public meeting held, and all the agencies, there's, of course, with any pit, there's always a back and forth trying to get the agencies on side. A long story short, 6 months ago, the agencies were on side. So to be clear, MNRF and the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, among others, are both on side now. So that's good. And it was our understanding that the municipality was also on board as well. And there are no objections, that's important here, under the Aggregate Resource Act. So this is not a matter that's going to end up at the what was previously known as the Ontario Municipal Board, unless someone objects to these applications, what we call the Planning Act applications. So just a couple things quickly here. So these comments that we heard today, I heard from John a number of months ago, back in April, and we had, I thought we had, well, at least we responded, whether or not we had resolved the issue, and obviously we hadn't. So first of all, regarding the slope, to be clear, that's in keeping with ministry MNRF standards. If the slopes are more gradual, as John is suggesting, then that means a considerably lesser amount of material would be removed from the pit, and that would seem to fly in the face of the province's stance on gravel pits and their desire to see effective use of that resource. Secondly, if the province felt that slopes should be more gradual in their prime agricultural areas, then presumably that would be clearly stated in the provincial policy statement and in the ministry standards for gravel pits, and it's not. On that note, I did speak directly with a representative, Carol Newman, from OMAFRA about this. I spoke with her about 5 years ago on the same topic, and her position hasn't changed. The Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Rural Affairs is fine with the proposed slope. With regard to the setback from the environmental hazard designation in the official plan, I did address that as well before. Yes, the official plan requires a 50-meter setback, but that requirement is not substantiated or backed by any other policy. You won't find that 50-meter setback in the provincial policy statement. It seems to be, in my mind, an arbitrary number that was chosen by the county when they adopted their official plan many years ago. The proposal is for a 30-meter setback. It's not a hazard feature. It's hazard lands. There will be a 160-meter setback from the Teeswater River, just to be clear. And also to be clear, these setbacks have been supported by the MNRF biologist and from Saugeen Valley staff. So this should not be an issue. I have been involved in a number of gravel pits in the last several years where we have also asked for the same relief, that is set back to 30 meters as opposed to 50. It's never been an issue. It's been approved all the time. But again, I think what's important here is we've got the biologists from MNRF and the Conservation Authority staff on site as well. My last comment, and then I'll sit down, is that there is mention in the report and in John's presentation about the number of pits in the area. That is respectfully, that is in no way relevant. The provincial policy statement is very clear in stating that we are not to look at need or demand. It specifically states a demonstration of need for mineral aggregate resources, including any type of supply-demand analysis, shall not be required, notwithstanding the availability, designation, or licensing for extraction of mineral aggregate resources locally or elsewhere. So it's really not on the table, and it's not something that if something ever ended up at formerly the board, now the tribunal, that they could possibly look at. So I'd ask you to take that into consideration, and I would respectfully request that you take into consideration the local mayor's recommendation is to have this approved sooner than later. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak to this application? One more time, is there anyone present who would like to speak to this application? If not, then I guess the recommendation is that this report for official plan amendment number 231-18.06 submitted by Teeswater Concrete be received for information. We need a mover and a seconder for that. And Dan, is there any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So, thank you. Then the next item on the agenda is public, and again, it's a public meeting. This one is, there is a recommendation with it, and it's Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 233, Saugeen Golf Course, and we'll follow the same process. Our planner will present the report. It will take comments from the committee and the public, and Dan's going to present the planning report. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So I do have the sign-in sheet. I think it may have been signed by everyone here for this OPA, but nonetheless, I'll put it in the corner over here in case there's others. Okay, so this is an official plan amendment. The applicant is Saugeen Golf Club. They are the owners of a parcel of land that lies directly east of their golf course operations. The lands are currently vacant. They're designated rural in the county official plan and zoned open space 3 in the town of Saugeen Shores zoning bylaw. So the applicant is proposing to create up to 2 lots within an area of this land, and in order to do that, they're seeking relief from a specific policy in the county official plan. It's policy 6.5.3.4.1, which states that in no instance shall an original Crown Survey lot designated rural be subdivided into more than 3 lots. So the applicant is proposing to create what would be the 4th and 5th lots. The actual number of lots, whether it be 1 or 2, would be dependent on a number of studies to demonstrate the lands are suitable and viable for residential use. There were no studies submitted with the application, so we simply don't know at this point if it's 0, 1, or 2 lots that would be viable in this location. There was a public meeting with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment held on August 20th. No decision has been made on that zoning bylaw, but a number of comments were received with respect to some concerns in the area. And we heard those concerns at the public meeting as well. So those concerns sort of ranged from concerns regarding the groundwater quantity and quality, impacts to agricultural land, impacts on wildlife, species at risk, and natural heritage features, concerns regarding the wetness of the land and suitability generally for residential use, and concerns regarding impacts on views, as well as traffic and noise. So I've highlighted or provided responses to some of those concerns in the report, and have also included them as an appendix in their in full to the report. So I'll cover perhaps a couple of the more pertinent issues: groundwater quality and quantity. One of the proposed conditions in the amendment would be a hydrogeological impact study to get a better understanding of what the groundwater conditions are in the area. Again, at this point, we simply have no knowledge whether or not there are issues related to groundwater quality and quantity. We've certainly heard from members of the public that they have experienced issues regarding groundwater in the past, and for that reason, I think it would probably be prudent to require that that study as a condition in the proposed amendment. The lands are designated rural, which are typically a lower class soil quality, not as suitable for agriculture. And rural lands are in the PPS are envisioned for limited residential use. So there is a certain expectation to some degree that there may be residential uses on the lands. To that end, our county official plan does contain policies under the estate residential area, policies that would potentially support a estate lot plan, a subdivision on the lands. It's county planning staff's view that should residential development occur on the lands, it be planned for in a little more comprehensive manner under the estate lot residential policies. And there's certain characteristics associated with the estate lot residential policies, one of which would be the lots would face an internal road, and they would typically be a little larger in size. The proposed lots are about 1.4 acres. The estate lot residential policies would allow for lots to be up to 1 hectare in size. And they would typically follow the contours and natural heritage features of the land. So that's sort of my position on this anyways. If residential development were to occur, these types of lands would lend themselves to that sort of development. It's not entirely without merit. There would be residential development on the lands being adjacent to a golf course. Those are the type of lands envisioned under the estate lot residential policies. It's my understanding that the applicant would eventually like to develop the lands through a plan of subdivision. However, at this point, they simply don't have the means to do so, and these lots would further that concept. So that's a bit of an overview of where the applicant would like to go eventually with these lands. So back quickly to the provincial policies. There is a need to demonstrate the lands are suitable for residential use. At this point, it's tough to say whether or not they're suitable for residential use, although I think the proposed amendment does contain conditions that would ensure that lot creation would be subject to demonstrating suitability. on the lands. With respect to the SVCA, the lands fall outside of the regulated area, and the SVCA did provide comment that that they did not feel the impacts of the proposal warranted an EIS. With respect to the town, they requested that a stormwater management plan and comprehensive grading plan be undertaken prior to development. So again, those studies were included as conditions on the within the amendment, as well as a nitrate study, which is fairly typical of rural lot creation to understand the impacts of sewage disposal on the lands and impacts on the surrounding area. So in summary, this is a challenging application for planning staff to support because of the lack of studies. Typically, when a proposal comes in, we require evidence to demonstrate that establishing a new principle of use through a land use redesignation can be accommodated, and there's the lands are suitable for the proposed use. At this point, without knowing, it's challenging for me to throw my support behind that. Mind you, as I outlined, residential development on the lands is not totally without merit under the estate residential area policies, which would envision the lands to be developed a little more comprehensively. And that's my report, I guess.
Thank you, Dan. Is the committee any questions of Dan? None? Seems to be none. Thanks, Dan. Would anyone from in the public like to speak to this application? Would any member of the public like to speak to this application? Just please state your name, so I think we know, but for the record.
Good morning, Warden Eagleson, Chair Smith, and members of the Planning and Development Committee, also to the staff, members of the public. My name is Mark Kramer, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of Saugeen Golf and Country Club regarding the OPA amendment request that's before you. Joining me today from the golf course are our current Vice President, Mr. Doug Freiberger, our past, first of all, let me give you an idea of the structure of Saugeen Golf Club. Saugeen Golf Club is a nonprofit entity incorporated 105 years ago, operating in the same system for that time frame. There are 100 certificate holders who have all paid to purchase a certificate, which allows them to participate in the management of the golf course, whereby annually those certificate holders from amongst the 100 elect 3 directors. The board consists of 9 of the certificate holders. 3 are elected annually for a 3-year term. So we have a constant turnover. Every one of those positions is voluntary. Every one of the certificate holders is voluntary. And we drive this concept to provide affordable golf in the best conditions we can for the lowest prices we can. No one here today has any financial or pecuniary interest in this application, nor will there be any benefit to any of the people that are here today. It's entirely a volunteer basis, and with me today also is Mr. Ken Dunlop, who some of you may know, and several members of the club, along with various members of Saugeen Shores Council. I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. These lands that are under review, the 2 lots that we are contemplating or requesting permission to sever by consent, and Kara's bringing up the picture right now. The lands in question, both the 2 lots that are under consideration for the consent, plus the retained lands, were purchased originally from Mrs. Jean Robertson as part of the Robertson Farm. They were purchased years ago with the concept that we were going to expand Saugeen Golf Club to a 36-hole facility. We opened the 3rd 9, being our 27th hole, back in the early 2000s, and the intent was to move forward with the final expansion being on these lands for 9 holes of golf. all of you, I'm sure, are aware, especially through the economic development people in the room, golf has had a significant downturn in the past 10 to 15 years, whereby it has made it virtually impossible for us to continue the concept of identifying a fourth nine as being a viable option. In addition to that, operating continues to be a challenge in terms of generating enough net revenue in order to keep this club viable on an annual basis. Annually, of course, we have a general meeting of the certificate holders, and of course the question is always raised, are we making best use of the assets that are owned by Saugeen Golf and Country Club? And a year ago, the answer came back, clearly not, because we have 94 acres of land here that effectively is incredibly good at growing weeds and very little else. There's about 25 acres in there that are actually arable. We do rent those to a local farmer and have for the last 3 or 4 years. But the balance of that land is primarily scrub land. There hasn't been any livestock grazed on that property in as long as we can remember. In the past 30 to 40 years, I've been a member there for 34 years and never remember that being the use there. And in terms of its value as an agricultural property, it's virtually zero. Hence, we then said, why don't we see if we can develop this land as a lot of courses have around the province of Ontario to try to continue the financial viability. And hence the application here, in order for us to move forward with this development, we deemed that the best appropriate path forward was to look at 2 lots to provide some cash capital for us to drive the process forward of examining the potential and to fund the costs of any future development and to also sustain the golf course from an income standpoint of view. We then move forward with this. We appreciate, as was pointed out by Dan, we have not done the surveys, the nitrate loading. We haven't done the hydrological report. We haven't done a grading plan for you. We haven't done a storm management plan for you, because our concern was to incur those costs and then find out that we actually couldn't receive approval to create these 2 lots. That's a double whammy when you're in a situation where every dime, every dollar is very important to be retained within this club. So hence, I stand before you without those reports being prepared. But I would point out to you in the contents of the planning report, it seems that we're not totally misgiven in our request. I appreciate the limitations on how many lots can be severed from an original tract. I appreciate these are beyond that, as Mrs. Robertson's property on the corner and the one that she severed off beside it have already come off of that tract. And I appreciate that that is not in line with the official plan of Bruce County. But we are asking you to consider what is the best possible use of those lands. And we believe that growing weeds and being vacant is not as acceptable as having 2 houses on that property, both single-family dwellings, in order to drive some form of meeting some of the needs of the estate residential lots, as was referred to by Dan. Estate residential is a difficult thing to find in our county. It's almost impossible to find in Saugeen Shores. And there is a large demand for this type of living accommodation, and we believe these 2 lots are ideally suited for that environment, for that particular category of estate residential. If you will note that Saugeen Valley Conservation provided a very detailed report and had absolutely no objections in any respect, not as to any of the areas that they talked to. 6 or 7 categories from Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority said there was no impact, limited or no impact, and no impact. And they also went as far as to suggest that an EIS was not necessary in light of where they were and the location vis-a-vis any environmental hazard property on that land or any other impact to potential agricultural production. The Saugeen Métis had no objection. Saugeen Ojibwe, the school boards, even county transportation, all identified it as absolutely no concern. The Dahl Side Road, as you see there, was reconstructed in the early 2000s, and we reconstructed that road at that time to exceed normal vehicular standards because that is one of the main access routes to the Saugeen Shores dump, which is located on the 14th of Saugeen, which is to the top end of that particular picture. So ability to handle any increased traffic from 2 residential properties, A, we don't believe that increased traffic is going to be significant, and B, we don't believe that it's going to have any abuse to the road because of the manner in which it was reconstructed in the first place. We appreciate that there is a request for the studies. We have also indicated that there is a possibility with funds derived from the potential sale of these 2 lots, if approved by yourself and when created, they would provide the funds to move forward with a potential plan of subdivision if the golf course decided it was prudent to do so. The nitrate study, the hydrogeological study, and the stormwater management study, we believe would be more appropriately requested under a plan of subdivision for multiple lots as opposed to the potential nitrate loading and the hydrogeological impact to the groundwater system from 2 wells and 2 septics on 3 acres of property. We would ask that committee, if amenable to approving this application, might consider a deferral of those reports to the plan of subdivision concept. However, we will leave that up to you to decide in your own volition. Again, we're asking any assistance we can have to minimize costs is certainly our driving motivation here. Saugeen Golf and Country Club is a main tourist attraction to Bruce County. Last week we hosted 128 of the best and finest senior golfers in the province of Ontario at what is called the Ontario Senior Ryder Cup competition. These people filled hotels, they filled restaurants, and they are now throughout Ontario spreading the word of Saugeen Golf and Country Club because they were stunned by such a jewel that's hidden in their term, the wilderness. We've been telling them for years that this golf course was worth their while to come. Ken Dunlop and his committee that put that tournament together are to be applauded because senior people, all primarily members of private courses, have rated Saugeen Golf Club as good or better than anything in the province of Ontario today. It's a testament to the management and the people of that course, and we ask you to help us to continue to use that as a marketing tool for tourism in Bruce County now and into the future, and we would respectfully ask that you approve this application, and we humbly await your decision. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public would like to speak to this application? Again, just please state your name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Wanda Jerzanowski, and I'm speaking, reading Jean Robertson's letter, who is unable to stand at this time. This letter is to advise that I am opposed to the zoning bylaw amendment and county plan amendment application for 5278 Bruce Road 3, Port Elgin. I have lived at 5194 Bruce Road 3, Port Elgin for the last 70 years. My husband and I raised a family on this farm of 100 acres. We had a herd of Holstein cattle which grazed on the land. Fields were planted with grain and harvested. Hay was mowed and baled for the use of the cattle, horses, chicken, pigs, ducks, and geese we also raised. During the summer and fall months, the wells were monitored to ensure an adequate supply for human and animal consumption. Unfortunately, at times during the summer and fall months, our wells would go dry. The year the Saugeen Golf Course dug a new pond severely affected our water supply, resulting with our main well for the cattle and horses to go dry. That was the start of the golf course trucking water to our farm. Eventually, we had to drill a well as our dug wells could not provide enough water. I kept the land mowed and well maintained. At that time, Saugeen Township was very quick to let a farm owner know weeds and scrub trees were unacceptable. How times have changed since I sold a section of land to the Saugeen Golf Course. This land is home to small and large wildlife. What will happen to their habitat if more homes are built on agriculture land? Rural people have learned how to live with their wildlife friends. The traffic on Doll's Side Road has increased over the years, along with the noise, dust, and garbage. This is my letter of official objection to the rezoning of this land. Jean Robertson.
Thank you. Any other member of the public?
Mr. Chairman, committee, I'm Doug Pedwell. I live at 244 Doll Side Road. I've been there for the last 35 years, and I do remember the cattle grazing across the road. And I used to, with Jean's permission, used to cross over there to find out what else was in that property. My first concern is the water. According to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, no site inspection has been completed. And this area is like a wellhead, particularly in the spring, and is quite wet. And there are many indicator species such as osier red dogwood, which is always found where wet areas are. And if you look in the spring on this road, and I've been monitoring it because of my shallow well, you can actually see the line on the pavement where the water table is every spring, and I can watch it sort of go down the road a little bit. Although Saugeen Shores did rebuild the road is subsiding right now, and you can spot it. When they had the Grand Fondo, they had the works crew out spraying the road, the caving around the road for safety of the Grand Fondo, which was a bike ride to raise funds for the hospital. If you look at maps, and the farthest I've been able to look back so far is the 1929 topographic map, this area has always been shown as wet. The marsh symbols are on the maps for the whole place. If houses are going to be put there, the land is wet. It's saturated, particularly in the spring. Drainage is going to have to be put in. Where's that drainage going to go? The water in this area tends to flow north along the side of the road. And this leads to pooling of the water. So if there's increased drainage from that area, what effect does it have on the shallow wells? For example, 219 Dollside Road, when Mrs. Robertson's son had a pig farm there, in the summer, August and September, her son would come over and get water from my well to feed his pigs because there wasn't enough. So if you start to drain, what effect does that have on that well and that property? What effect is the water flow going down? The fields flood down there in the spring. Does this mean that there's going to be more flooding in the fields on the north where the cattle are now pastured and horses are now pastured and sheep are pastured and crops are raised? What impact is that kind of drainage going to have on the road infrastructure? It's already subsiding. You can see it. Now, I have become more and more aware of the disappearance of agricultural land. This is a worldwide phenomenon. As we build more houses on prime agricultural land, we're going to have to stop preserving it because we need it. There's already a shortage of agricultural land in this world. We are one of the last remaining places in Ontario that has reasonably good agricultural land, and we need to take a look at it. Even though it's called scrub land, grows weeds, one man's weeds, another man's flower. And I'd like to thank the Saugeen Golf Course for promoting milkweed because we have now the most magnificent monarch population in our area. The wildlife concerns are also rather important to me. Those who know me know that I have been on the Huron Fringe Birding Festival, bringing tourists into this area for the last 10 years. And my personal observation of this particular hunk of land is that there are definitely a number of listed species on there. Bobolink, meadowlark, a very interesting one, the grasshopper sparrow, and one that I found most interesting is the eastern ribbon snake. I suspect that the hill that's on that property that's listed contains a hibernaculum. That's a place where the snakes go to spend the winter because the area is too wet, so they have to go to higher ground. So far this August, I have found 2 dead bodies of ribbon snakes on the road heading in that direction. The hill, with its spruce trees at the top, are home to things like kestrels, etc. And interestingly enough, monarchs and common mergansers have raised families in that area. So that's an indication of how wet that land really is. So those are the major concerns: water, loss of agricultural land, and endangered species. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public, or you have a question for Mr. Pedwell?
I did.
Go ahead, Jan.
I did. So I'm just wondering about the wells. I heard a reference to dug wells, and are
there
these
are-
drilled wells?
there
and
are-
how deep are you going for water?
My well is 33 feet. My original well was 15. And I'm not sure what happened to change the water course. We did have a small rumble of an earthquake go through once, and I'm just wondering if that made the change. When you dig down in this area, if you take a look at it, it's actually a lagoon from Glacial Lake Algonquin. And there's a huge clay bed under there, so it's a swale like this, and water collects. My well did not go deeper when we bored it, because we dug it first and I had to bore through it, and we hit a lot of water.
So are these like artesian wells or?
No, they're not artesian.
They're dug wells?
They're dug wells, but in the spring, right where that hill is, which part of that property, seems to be a wellhead, seems to have water pressure up because the water's running out of there. But it doesn't come all the way to the surface all year, just in the spring.
So so in our farm area, decades back, it seemed to be on our farms that you could have water at 100 feet. And then that vein went dry. So I'm not familiar with the hydrology of your area. And then we had to go to much deeper wells, and some of my relatives had to go over 200 feet for water. So I'm not familiar with
Well,
the
if you're going to
Soggy
drill,
Shores area.
if you're going to drill in our area, you're going to go down 400 minimum,
Okay, so it's very, very deep.
and then you're going to have sulfur and iron.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. I was just relating to my own experience with wells.
Thank you.
I'll just let you know there are 3 serviceable dug wells used, and there are 3 that are still on the land from the time when Mrs. Robertson had cattle.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak to this application?
I'm speaking on my own behalf this time. I'm Wanda Jersnowski. I live at the corner of Bruce Road 3 and Doll Side Road. I've lived there for 11 years. The motivation for the Saugeen Golf Course is simply profit to get their operations out from a cash deficiency. It is not thinking about the land. What Mr. Kramer calls scrub land is only scrub land because that's his opinion. It is an area that is diverse and beneficial to the people that live in the area aesthetically, rainwater holding ground for the animals that use that path, and insects and reptiles. My own well is a shallow well right at the corner of Bruce Road 3 and Dollside Road in my hayfield. That entire area that runs along Bruce Road 3 is wet and saturated through to the beginning of summer in most years. The property in question is not something that I would personally like to have a lot on. A few years ago, the golf course had a public meeting where they were proposing numerous houses, lots, off of Bruce Road 3. That was, again, trying to make their operations viable. I don't know anyone that gives out of their back pocket to a business whatever they want because they simply need to make their business viable. As far as I know, that plan did not go through. They had said they were going to bring in town water, and at the end, what I heard was because they would not maintain a road into a subdivision and be responsible for that road and its maintenance, that did not go through. The property in question is diverse. It's important. It's part of our heritage. It's part of Bruce County and what Bruce County, for me, stands for. I'm an Ontario girl, moved out to Alberta, was there for half my life, and I came back here. And I picked the property I had because I want to take care. I want to be a steward of my property. I don't use pesticides. I pull weeds in my paddock. I have horses. I grow my own hay. My animals are taken care of, and I work full-time. So it's not impossible to take care of a property on your own if your heart is in it and if the true intent of what land means to someone, and not just as a commercial enterprise, and not just to profit on the hard workings of people before us, like Jean Robertson and her family. So I'm also concerned about my water. I'm concerned about my well. I'm concerned about the impact of having 2 more properties that may be using much more water than I would ever use. I use rain barrels. I don't water unnecessarily. The plants that I have either survive and they're tough like me, or they get watered occasionally by the rainfall. It's important for us to know that you cannot allow people to do what they want because they can't get the hydrological studies done because there are insufficient funds. So I implore you that the proper procedure be followed in this and all other instances, and that we preserve our heritage and our land in Bruce County. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to speak to this application? I asked one more time, is there any other member present that would like to speak to this application? If not, then I guess we'll close the public meeting and deal with the issue. So, get back to it here. Any comments from the committee? The recommendation, the recommendation is that Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 233-18.44 be refused.
Just had a comment. You know, it's tough. You have a volunteer group, they're running a business, but I would like to see more about the water and how that's going to be managed. Is water going to be trucked in? If everybody kind of runs out of water, and the fact that I don't know enough about the and maybe you do, Mr. Chair, Mike, about the water in the area. I just don't feel I have enough information on that, because I have some friends in other areas of Ontario where the minerals in the water's not suitable when they go down deep. So if anybody can enlighten me more on that.
Maybe what the recommendation is refusing it, and if we take a different path and wish to approve this, I'll read what the amendment says, because it does. I think it does address that for you. It says, notwithstanding the policies, and it quotes the section, in the rural areas of this plan, the lands described as site-specific policy area, and again a long number in the town of Saugeen Shores, it would say may permit and 4th and 5th lot. So if we approve those 2 other severances parcels, subject to the completion of a nitrate study, a hydrological study, a stormwater management plan, and a comprehensive grading plan. So I think what the amendment's suggesting is we would try and address these concerns about water and nitrates and stormwater. If you can satisfy those, then the amendment would suggest that we could pass this amendment. I don't think that's maybe the right words, but so I think that's what if you're worried about, you would need a hydrological study that would satisfy the approval authority.
Okay.
It's a way. I think it's I don't know what page it is, Ann. It's page 49.
Okay. Trying to find the right page here.
It also goes on to say any subsequent residential lot creation on the retained land shall be through a plan of subdivision in accordance with the estate residential area policies of the Bruce County Official Plan.
Chairman Mike, is that amendment in our package?
Yes, it is. It's on page 49. It's right at the very end of the report, Paul. This is the proposed amendment that we're suggesting. So if we were to,
Well, I guess the recommendation is to refuse it, and I'm not interested in refusing it. So I was thinking that we need to defer it or amendment, and you've come up with an amendment to address the water and the other issues that the public have asked for. So to me, that's an acceptable path forward, and I certainly would support the amendment. And I suppose you want to, and I'll move the motion to refuse it and obviously vote against it.
Okay, I think that's the proper procedure here if you're entertaining, and we need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, which it's 44 pages above here. It is subject to a review of objections and submissions arising from the public hearing that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment number 233-18.44 be refused. So Paul has moved that. Do we have a seconder? Milt, okay. Any further discussion on it? I think, I guess my concern, I know it's a concern about, we have already 4 existing smaller parcels out there. I think two more is not a big stretch, but I do have, I think we need to address those issues that arise, whether they're water, stormwater, or nitrate study. And I think maybe this way, it's kind of unusual to do it this way, but we can do it we can approve it subject to those plans being satisfactory. So then I guess I go back to the main question is, and is there any further discussion on the motion to refuse?
So we're refusing, just want to make sure that I've got it straight. We're refusing not the amendment at the last. We're refusing what exactly? We're refusing, if you could just explain it a little bit.
Kara's going to like that.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair. So the recommendation in front of committee is refusal. Committee should make a decision on that recommendation, and then if committee wanted to enter in another recommendation, they can do so through a mover and seconder.
So we're
just again-
refusing what, at page 49?
That's
we're
correct.
Refusing that.
Yes. Yes, the recommendation is to refuse. The proposed amendment is, which I read in partial here. Is everybody clear? Yes. Yes. So the first item is the recommendation we would refuse. And we're going to turn around and approve it. Refusing the whole application.
Yes. Refusing the amendment. In its present form.
Okay, and then,
So
but we're not refusing page 49. Okay.
So the issue, I mean, if you refuse that, meaning we're refusing the recommendation, then we vote on, you could approve, we would, as it's written. They're refusing the entire application as it's written. So if we defeat that, we have the option, whatever committees we can bring forward. Is that clear? Madam CEO, have you anything to add to this?
No, that covers it.
There's still some confusion. Well, for you, yeah, so maybe we need to make sure everybody understands. So
For clarity,
just
procedurally?
The clarity of what we're refusing right now.
So right now, the recommendation before committee is for refusal. You've had a mover and seconder with regards to that. The committee can make a decision with regards to that recommendation for refusal. If committee wished to move forward in a different direction than that recommendation.
Before you go there, though, Kara, just explain
Okay.
what we're refusing. That's what I did.
We're refusing 2 lots.
Yeah, well,
No. They're recommending refusing approval of this amendment.
yes.
And if we, so then the option is, if that passes, then we have the option to say yes, we can pass that, we say approval to the amendment as it's presented here, or any variation.
What's on 49?
Which is on page 49.
Which is on page 49.
That's right. So committee would have the option of entering in a different recommendation if it wished to after the decision on the first recommendation was made.
I'm worried that there's still some confusion here. So the recommendation from the planning department is to refuse it, and if we vote, and I moved that with full intention of not voting in favor of it. We need to vote that one out, get rid of that one, and then introduce the amendment.
If I can suggest at this point, it sounds like voting on this and refusing it will aid in the clarity. There is some confusion around this, but voting it down will aid in clarity. Then we can vote on something that is clearer, hopefully, than the amendment we have in front of us.
I guess to kind of summarize it very shortly, if it is your will to approve these amendments, then the path forward should be not to vote to refuse. We should defeat that motion and then approve a second motion. Is that clear?
Yeah, yeah.
How did we make it so complicated?
Planners seem to be able to do that.
If I may, I think.
So I guess, are we ready for the question then? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That's defeated. Now I need another motion. So that what is proposed then, and I'll read it if you want. Do you want me to read the entire amendment? I guess for clarity. Okay, the amendment is that the Bruce County official plan is amended as follows. 1, redesignating lands from rural area to rural area special, and further adding the following to subsection 5.6.9, exclusions, rural areas. 5.6.9.25, Saugeen Golf Course, official plan amendment number 233. Notwithstanding the policies of section 6.5.3.4, consents in rural areas, of this plan, the lands described as site-specific policy area 5.6.9.25 on Schedule A land use plan, part lot 13, concession 13, being part 1, reference plan 3R 7204, Town of Saugeen Shores, Geographic Township of Saugeen, may permit a fourth and fifth parcel to be severed off the original Crown surveyed lot, subject to the completion of a nitrate study, a hydrological impact study, a stormwater management plan, and a comprehensive grading plan to the satisfaction of the county and the Town of Saugeen Shores staff. Any subsequent residential lot creation on the retained lands shall be through a plan of subdivision in accordance with the estate residential area policies of the Bruce County official plan. That is the amendment. Is there a mover? Okay, so the recommendation is approval of this amendment. So it's been moved by Paul. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Robert. Is there any further discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. So we have one other public meeting, and it is scheduled for 10, so we're a little behind that, but it's the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 229-1854, Castlebrink in care of Barry's Construction, and there's a recommendation with this one. There is a recommendation with this one. Just before everybody leaves, if anybody wants any other information on this, make sure you sign the registry sheet. Okay?
So you just want to look at mine because you're one ahead on your screen.
Oh, okay. And this one is accompanied with a recommendation, so we'll follow the same procedure as we followed in the last one. And we will call on Amanda to present the planning report. Welcome, Amanda.
Good morning. Thank you. Catherine Cruselbrink, care of Barry's Construction and Insulation Limited, applied to amend the county official plan, local official plan, and zoning bylaw to facilitate 2 new lots and 3 lot additions to existing lots at Chesley Lake. The municipal address of the property to be severed is 11 Island View Drive in the town of South Bruce Peninsula. If there are any members of the public here to participate in the public meeting for this property, I would ask that they sign in on the public registry located right there so that we can note their presence at the meeting and they can preserve their appeal rights. The Bruce County Official Plan Amendment is requested to redesignate portions of the subject lands from inland lake to inland lake special to permit the severance of a lot which does not front on an existing road allowance which is opened and maintained on a year-round basis, and the creation of backlots which are less than 1 hectare. Regarding agency comments, the town of South Bruce Peninsula, the original application proposed to sever the private road and lake access points as a separate lot. The town of South Bruce Peninsula did not support the severance of the private road as a separate parcel. They recommend keeping the road with one of the lots proposed to be severed, creating a condominium, or creating a combination of lot additions and easements to address tenure. As a result, the application to sever the road was withdrawn, with the private road and lake access points staying attached to one of the new proposed residential lots. And it's probably Appendix B might be the easiest to see it on. I don't know if it's possible to flip that one so that it's, to the right. Yeah. So on this, the private road and the lake access points are shown in B, and they've now been attached to consent application B32 right there. Yeah. Thank you. The town noted in their comments that the requested relief from the requirement for frontage on a public road is no longer necessary, as the application to sever the private road was withdrawn and the private road is proposed to stay with the new residential lot, which provides it with frontage on the municipal road. The town noted that the unopened portion of the road allowance leading to Chesley Lake has not been improved by the town to provide shoreline access, and they recommend shoreline access be provided by way of easement over the private road and lake access points. The Grace Auble Conservation Authority staff have no objection to the Bruce County and local official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments to address the 3 proposed lot additions in the applications, which are applications B29, B30, and B31. The GSCA recommends that a stormwater management plan be prepared for the 2 residential lots described as B28 and B33. Ideally, these lots should be added to adjacent existing developed lots to minimize impacts on Chesley Lake. Planning staff recommend that grading and drainage be addressed when development of the lots is proposed. A peer-reviewed D54 assessment supported new lot creation. Regarding comments through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change provided technical comments through MMAH on the D54 sewage system assessment submitted in support of the application. 2 sets of comments were received recommending that the D54 assessment be peer-reviewed to ensure the development met water quality requirements of the provincial policy statement. Specific concerns related to water quality impacts included phosphorus levels. Based on the province's 2 recommendations and outstanding concerns related to water quality and the suitability of the treatment approaches proposed, staff requested a peer review of the D54 assessment. The peer review indicated that the study with some additional information provided by the applicant's engineer was satisfactory. Regarding public comments, the minutes of the public meeting at the town of South Bruce Peninsula are attached as Appendix C. To the report, issues generally related to the road access, increasing boating activity on the lake, and water quality. Since the May 23, 2018 public meeting, an additional comment shown in Appendix D has been received expressing concern about access to the water for one of the new lots. That would be B28 shown in red on the map there. As noted, the town does not consider the end of the road allowance to have been developed as a water access, and access will need to be provided by easement to the existing access shared by several other non-waterfront lots over the private road. Regarding matters of provincial interest, the primary issues arising from the provincial policy statement related to sewage, water, and stormwater, noting the responsibility of planning authorities to protect water quality. Again, as noted, the applicants provided a D54 sewage system assessment that demonstrated that private services can be used to achieve minimum water quality standards, and planning staff recommend that should the lots be approved, grading and drainage plans be required as conditions of consent. So the application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. Regarding matters arising from the county official plan, A detailed analysis of county official plan policies is available in Appendix E of the report. The D54 assessment supports the creation of new lots, and the modification to the application to withdraw consent to create a separate lot with the private road means no relief is required or warranted from road frontage requirements. The county official plan requires waterfront access for backlots when lot creation is proposed in recreational areas. As noted, the town does not consider the end of the road access to have been developed as a water access, and access will need to be provided by easements to, over the private road and lake access points, which are already shared by several other non-waterfront lots. Planning staff are satisfied that the 2 new lots can be appropriately serviced without adverse impact on the lake and groundwater, and that the addition of the private road to lot B32 addresses the back lot access. Therefore, the application is consistent with the County of Bruce official plan. As the following issues were addressed through the application process: first, road access and tenure; second, lot size for development on private systems; and third, waterfront access for backlots. The Planning and Development Department, subject to review of objections and submissions arising from the public hearing today, recommends that Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 229-18-18.54 be approved, and that the necessary bylaw be forwarded to council for adoption. And that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda, is Gritty any questions of Amanda? No.
Yeah, just to clarify on this one, can you go back to the picture, please, 60? So the greens are the lot additions, or?
Yes, that's right. So like the top 2/3 of them are what is being added, and then the bottom third shows the lots as they currently exist. So those lots are going to be considerably enlarged by the lot additions.
Okay, and that last lot, 832, is it, or what is that? 832? So before 832, that private road was deeded to everyone, was in everyone's deed, right?
So through the chair, the private road is owned by, it's part of the same parcel. It's a very odd-shaped parcel, so it's got kind of the comb portion at the back, and it includes the private road and lake access points. That private road has a number of easements over it, right, granting access to the various property owners along that road, but the road ownership is currently with 11 Island View Drive, which is made up of this very odd-shaped lot.
Okay. Okay, and 832 was off the larger parcel at the end there. Okay. Good, thank you, Amanda.
Committee, any further questions of Amanda? Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Is there any member present who would like to speak to this? Please come in. Just push there's a little button that turns the mic on. Just state your name for the record. And there.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Brent England. I reside at 29 Island View Drive, which is immediately to the left of the most left green square there. My wife has been a resident of Island View Drive since 1997. My history goes back to 2002 on the street. I prepared a letter for the committee for the county. I would just like to read that into the record. I'll try and be as brief as possible. Thank you for your time this morning. Plan D28, which is the plan of survey which forms the basis of the description of all these properties, was prepared in 1981 under the Boundaries Act of Ontario and confirmed by the Director of Titles and registered in the Land Registry Office on April 7th, 1982. This plan was prepared to clear up problems associated with the method by which the properties shown on Plan D28 were created. The original parcels were created by meets and bounds descriptions contained in the original severance deeds and from Farm Lot 20 Concession 2 in Amabel Township. The boundaries of the properties as shown on Plan D28 were based on the registered deed descriptions and any evidence of occupation on the ground established over many years. Plan D28 is not considered to be a plan of subdivision. The severance consent applications listed above, which are B28, 29, 30, 31, and 32, are part of Parcel 3 on Plan D28. Is generally referred to as Lot 3 in the applications, and for consistency, I will continue referring to the D28 parcels as lots. In regards to application B28, B28 is for the creation of a new residential lot out of Lot 3, D28. This new lot will have frontage on the municipally owned portion of Island View Drive. It's the red parcel on the sketch up there. In the planning report for this application, the municipality of South Bruce Peninsula requested that this new lot should be provided with access to Chesley Lake through the private portion of Island View Drive and the existing private lake access points, which are the three blue rectangles at the bottom of the plan. These three lake access points are currently at or over capacity and will not support additional users. This new lot would have access to Chesley Lake via the original municipal road allowance between concessions 1 and 2 as provided in the Crown Plan of Amabel Township. That would be the road allowance immediately on the far left side of the sketch there, which runs from the Sea Line, Lilac Lane intersection all the way down to the lake. Access across private land would not be necessary due to the existing municipal road that runs to the water's edge of Chesley Lake. Current policy is that in shoreline development areas, development shall not exceed 2 units per hectare. The current ratio for the private portion of Island View Drive is approximately 9 units per hectare. This is over 4 times the recommended density for this area. It is unreasonable for the South Bruce Peninsula to request that a further burden on the Island View Drive private lands, whatever the reason, and increased traffic will devalue the existing properties that utilize these private lake access points. Lake access for this proposed new residential lot would be provided by the municipal road allowance. The municipal road allowance portion of Island View Drive, as well as the municipal road allowance between concessions 1 and 0, which is the Sea Line and Lilac Lane, to the top of that drawing, currently provide access to Chesley Lake for at least 12 properties on the Sea Line, High Hill Road, Island View Drive, and Lilac Lane, and also the general public. In regards to consents B29, 30, and 31, there are applications by Catherine Chrisselbrink to sever 3 portions of Lot 3, Plan D28, and add them to existing residential properties fronting on the northwesterly side, or the top side of that drawing, of Island View Drive. These applications are similar to the parcel additions that were carried out in the late 1980s and 90s and the early 1990s. These parcel additions increase the size of these undersized parcels on the northwesterly side of Island View Drive, which is actually shown as Lot 1 on Plan D28, which is the private road. These lots were generally only 50 feet in depth, and the additional lands were a benefit to these properties. As true lot additions, I have no issue with the applications B30 and B3 and B30, 31, sorry. Application B29 is in addition to a vacant lot 33 on Plan D28, which is the most leftward green rectangle there. Lot 33 is owned along with waterfront Lot 20 immediately to the south or towards the lake. And the owner has access to the lake through Lot 20, and as there is no room for parking on Lot 20, currently uses Lot 33 for parking. This lot addition, in fact, creates a new residential building lot and does not improve an existing dwelling lot, but enables the owner to sell or build on this property and increase the neighborhood density that is already over 4 times the recommended level. This additional development would also increase the stress on the lake access lots that are already at peak capacity during the summer season. Application B32 is for the creation of a new residential lot out of Lot 3, Plan D28, located at the end of the private portion of Island View Drive. In the original application, this new lot did not have frontage on the municipal-owned portion of Island View Drive, as outlined by the previous speaker, and access was to be provided by a right-of-way over Lot 1, Plan D28, which is the private road. I repeat my comments above regarding density, and this additional development increased the stress on the lake itself. Just a second here. In the comments received from South Bruce Peninsula, they were concerned that the applicant would stop paying taxes on Lot 1, Plan D28, which is the private road, and that title to Lot 1 would revert to the municipality for unpaid taxes, and they would have to start to maintain the private portion of Island View Drive. If this unlikely scenario ever came to pass, even though South Bruce Peninsula had title to the private road, they would be under no obligation to maintain it. The municipality has never maintained or spent money on this private road and could not be forced to start maintaining a private road that is, as has been outlined, is not up to municipal standards as far as width and construction. South Bruce Peninsula requested the severance consent for B32 include the original portion of Lot 3 in the application, which is the right-hand side blue rectangle on the top part of the road, yeah. And they requested that the application also include the private road, Lot 1, as well as the 3 existing private lake accesses, Lots 12, 17, and 22 on Plan D28. This will not improve the situation for the residents of Island View Drive. It would only maintain the status quo. The County of Bruce and the town of South Bruce Peninsula have an opportunity to solve a problem on Island View Drive that has existed since the severance of the first properties in this area over 60 years ago. The residents of Island View Drive currently have rights-of-way over Lot 1, the private road, to provide access to their properties from the municipal portion of Island View Drive. The owners of the properties on the northwesterly side, or the upper in the diagram there, currently have a right-of-way over one of the lots 12, 17, and 22 for access to the lake. The title to these lands has always been held by one person or family since the original severances. To improve the situation for the Island View Drive residents, this single ownership should not continue. The application provides an opportunity for government to rectify this situation. In the report from Town Council dated May 1st, 2018, South Bruce Peninsula has made it very clear they do not want anything to do with the private portion of Island View Drive. The applicant has also made it very clear by applying for these 3 lot additions and 2 new parcels that she does not want to have title to anything other than the retained portion of Lot 3, which is the purple parcel on the top and right. The private road, which is Lot 1 on D28, should be commonly owned by all the residents of Island View Drive that use it for access to their properties. The May 1st council minutes state that the town would prefer to see the private road continue to be part of one or the existing or severed properties, or conveyed as separate pieces to each adjoining property owner, or that a condominium be established over the private road. The first option, to have the road continue to be part of an existing or severed properties, is maintaining the status quo and does not improve the situation of the residents. The second suggestion, that the portion of the road in front of each property be transferred to the owners, is better than option 1, would involve significant legal and surveying costs and would require a multitude of cross easements between the residents over the entire road. The third option of creating an open space condominium out of the road would also involve significant legal and surveying cost. I believe that a variation of the second option is the solution to the problem. Instead of each adjacent owner having one half of the road in front of their property, the entire road, Lot 1 on Plan D28, should be held by all the adjacent property owners as tenants in common. Each resident would then have ownership of the road, and each property would then have frontage on an open municipal road. No additional surveying costs would be required as the road is properly described as Lot 1, Plan D28. The legal costs would be the preparation and registration of the transfer to each adjacent resident. I believe this would provide a solution that benefits all the residents of the private portion of Island View Drive. Lots 12, 17, and 22, which are the lake access points, could be treated in a similar manner. The property owners on the northwesterly side of Island View Drive that use one of these 3 lots would be given common ownership of that lot to maintain lake access. Again, no additional survey costs are required and only legal costs would be incurred. I again state that the use of the lake access lots is at capacity and that further development in the form of new building lots will interfere with the existing use of these access points and would result in decreased property values and increased stress on the health of the lake. I ask that Bruce County consider my comments during a review of the official plan amendment and the 5 severance consent applications. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brent. I'm going to ask if there's anybody else, but I've got some questions because you've went into a whole lot more detail on a number of issues that I really having trouble grasping on all of them. But is any member of the committee? We'll get back to you, Brent. Okay.
Sure.
Yep. I appreciate that. Thanks.
I have a copy of the letter here.
Yeah. Well, if you wouldn't mind leaving a copy of that with us, it'd be fine. You can bring it right here. Yep. Thank you. So, is there any other member of the public would like to speak to this?
Good morning. Thanks for having this meeting today and allowing me to speak. So this application has been on the books for quite some time, and I think it's likely caused our company and some of the planning staff some stress over the last few months, but we got through it, and we're at this point. We've worked hard to provide the planners and the township and the county with all the information as far as going with the peer review on a D54 study, which, as we all know, don't come cheap, but it did come back that it, to adjust Brent's point, would not add additional burden to the lake. It would not cause concerns to the lake that we were handling things properly as far as nitrates with the 2 additional septic systems. And additionally, on top of that, would actually make the situation better as the 2 existing lots in green on the right-hand side would be able to now put full septic systems in. So that overall, we're trying to make the situation better at the lake. My kids swim in the lake. All my family lives there, quite a number of them, and that's the whole. We'd like to make that situation better, and we feel we are. Again, this property's had a long history, as Brent, Mr. England has suggested. We've been working on this for several years, and we're hoping this situation, when we're done with this, is we're cleaning up this area. This is kind of a rounding out of development, and it represents kind of the final aspects and what we can do in this area, getting these lot additions done to some of these folks, and then creating that one lot off Island View Drive and the one with the road. Yeah, so essentially what I really wanted to make clear is that overall this situation is getting better. Now, a lot of the concerns that were noted previously was with the ownership of the road. That's a whole other matter. It really has nothing to do with the OPA. What we're discussing here today is that the size of the lots. The ownership of the road is something we'll continue to work with the county. Unfortunately, the municipality. Unfortunately, getting 30-something residents to agree on one thing in cottage country is going to be extremely difficult. So it's not just a matter of saying, could you guys please do something? This will take years to do, and if it could ever be done. So that's something we'll address separately from this application and really stands alone separate from this. So if there's any questions for me, I'd be glad to help.
Questions for committee from either presenters? Go ahead, Ann.
Sorry, I finally found this colored map that I can see. So the lot that you get access over, you're talking about this lot, is at the far end, right? Like I thought you said 1, but it's 51?
Sorry.
So the common lot that is for access, I see the 3 access points, I get that part. But the lot, you're talking about access at the far end, or does everybody just come in at the one end for access?
Want to go? It's through you, Mr. Chair. So right now, everybody that lives on the north side of the road, or no, sorry, I got to look this way. The west side of the road, I'm sorry, top side, they all come down that private road, which is part, I can't see it from here, but yeah, where the cursor's going now. So the 3 fingers off of that down to the bottom are the lake access points that currently the folks on the top part of that road all have deeds for access to the water.
Yes.
And part of the condition is that we would grant those as well to the 2 new lots. So overall, yeah, you might have 2 more users using them, essentially.
But that's the only common access to all the
Correct.
lots is that Island View Drive, right?
Correct.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Speak again, Brent. Please go ahead.
Just a quick clarification. And this goes to your question about access over the road and the access points, is that in fact there are 3 lots being created here, not 2. The middle one, Green Lot Addition, okay, also has a request to reasonably, it would need access over the existing road. The lot it's being added to has that already. However, it does not have access to the lake over the 3 fingers there, over the lot access points, because that owner has waterfront property across the road. So just to be clear, there's 3 lots at work here, not 2, because that lot is vacant in the middle, potential building site. If they decide to sell it, somebody wants to build, after this official plan amendment has been passed, they will be able to build there and increase, again, the traffic in the area, plus overcrowd my personal access to the lake. Thank you.
I guess for clarity though, that lot already exists, correct? And so all we're really doing or asking is enlarging it, is that correct? So okay. Has the committee got any other questions or concerns? I think part of this, I mean, we're asked for, part of it is the land use planning issue. Some of those, I think, are legal issues that we have, we may, I don't know, I can perhaps ask the director, would there be a way even to deal with it through the planning process? That's my concern. I'm not saying they're not legitimate concerns. I'm just wondering what the right forum here, and I'll ask Kara if she wants to comment to that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think through this application, it is an application for the Bruce County to amend the official plan. What we're hearing as comments from the public is in relationship specifically to Island View Drive and access over Island View Drive, which is, as you mentioned, the legal matters related to it. And as the applicant has indicated, that is something that would need to move forward with a number of parties on those properties in order to advance a resolution to it. The application that's in front of committee today is with regards to the official plan amendment that would support the lot creation.
Any further questions or comments then? Okay, I'm going to read it and then I'm going to move it. It's subject to the review of objections and submissions arising from the public meeting that the Bruce County Official Plan Amendment 22918-18.454 be approved and that necessary bylaw be forwarded to Council for adoption. It's been moved by Councilor Eagleson, the Warden, sorry. If we get a seconder. Milt, is there any further discussion on it? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda then is an action item, and it's Saugeen Shores Official Plan Amendment, Action Item A, 3.A.
You went ahead.
Sorry.
You jumped over here. This one here. So it's still Crystal Brink, it's the local official.
Yeah, okay. It's Saugeen, South Bruce Peninsula. This is, okay, South Bruce Peninsula Official Plan Amendment number 50, 1854 for Crystalbrink. And again, Amanda, I believe, is going to present the report. I want to get done.
Okay, thank you. So, as noted in my earlier report, Catherine Crystalbrink, care of Barry's Construction and Installation, applied to amend the county official plan, local official plan, and zoning bylaw to facilitate 2 new lots and 3 lot additions. The South Bruce Peninsula official plan amendment proposes to redesignate a portion of the subject lands from rural and shoreline development to shoreline development and shoreline development special policy area to permit development on private services to exceed 2 units per hectare. So bringing the rural lands into the shoreline development designation will align the local official plan designation with the area designated for inland lake development in the county official plan. A peer-reviewed D54 study demonstrated that the 2 new residential lots could support private servicing. Planning staff are satisfied that the local official plan amendment, as adopted by Town Council, is consistent with the provincial policy statement and would conform to the Bruce County official plan if the proposed county official plan amendment number 229 is adopted. So the recommendation is that South Bruce Peninsula official plan amendment 50-18.54 be approved, and that the Director of Planning and the Director of Planning and Development or Manager of Land Use Planning be authorized to sign the decision sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So she kindly read the recommendation for me, and I'm not going to do it again. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Milt, seconded by Robert. Is there any discussion on this item? Then all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So now the next item is action item 3B. It is Saugeen Shores Official Plan Amendment 9-18.48 for Weichel and Tralford, and Tessa is going to present.
Thank you. So this is a proposal to adopt a local official plan amendment that is requesting to redesignate the subject lands from highway commercial to residential in order to support the creation of 3 new residential lots. So maybe just for context, Kara, if you could go to the site plan. So these are lots currently fronting on Albert Street in Southampton. And the rear, these are, they all front, and they're quite deep lots. The lot at the top, you can see 158 Albert Street is currently residential in use, but it is designated highway commercial and zoned highway commercial. And the other lot, 164 Albert Street, has both residential and commercial uses on them. So there is a dwelling, but there's also a commercial office and storage building. And so the rear of these 3 lots is considered surplus commercial land and is proposed to be redesignated and rezoned. So there was a public meeting for the local official plan amendment and associated zoning bylaw amendment on June 18th, 2018. And a second meeting was held on July 16th, 2018. And then on July 23rd, the Town of Saugeen Shores Council passed bylaw 68-2018, which adopted the official plan amendment, and bylaw 69-2018, which approved the zoning bylaw amendment. And we are currently processing the 3 consent applications as well to sever these 3 lots. So those 3 will front onto Lee Lane, which will be substantially improved as a result of this application. So these, so it's a narrow lane, but it will be brought up to a higher standard. It won't be the full width of standard municipal street, but it will be a much higher standard than currently exists. So this application is consistent with the PPS, which supports infilling and intensification, and it conforms to the county official plan and the Saugeen Shores official plan as modified, and the intent and purpose of the local zoning bylaw. There were some public comments received in regards to this application, which have been included in the report. Mainly, these public comments had to do with some clarification involving what the works related to the lane and confirmation that there was no widening of the lane proposed, but that all the work would happen in the existing road allowance. There were also some concerns in regards to snow removal and as well as some concerns about the lights at Albert, or the intersection at Albert and Spence Street, which are beyond the scope of this application. So I feel that we've adequately addressed any of the concerns raised by the public, and so I do recommend I do recommend the approval of this application and the adoption of the local official plan amendment.
Thank you, Tessa. Any questions for Tessa? The recommendation is that the south route, that the Town of Saugeen Shores Official Plan Amendment 29-18.48 as shown in Appendix A be approved, and the Director of Planning and Development or Manager of Land Use Planning be authorized to sign the decision sheet. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Ann, seconded by Wilford. Is there any discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. I just, we have our, okay, thank you. There's two other information items, but I know we have closed a public session here, and we do have our legal counsel. I wonder if committee would if we go into close now, to discuss the issue with our legal counsel and then go back and do the other items. Is that, anybody got an objection to that? So then, I'll read the, so then, just hang on, it's that the committee move into closed meeting pursuant to section 239-2E of the Municipal Act relating to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before an administrative tribunal affecting the municipality local board, and Steve O'Melia, section 3.3.1, the Municipal Act, for the purpose of educating or training members. I need a mover and a second. Moved by Milt, seconded by Ann. All in favor? We're in closed. Update, and Bruce is going to present.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. This is, we've called this the Land Use Planning Transformation Update Report. We have been reporting on the one part of this, the strategic work, which involves Bruce GPS, the engagement plan. But we last reported to committee in April regarding the overall transformation project that we've have underway, which also includes a tactical side of it, which is looking at our processes, trying to make improvements within our own processes, trying to improve our internal and external communications with council and local councils, as well as with the public. Just to remind you again, since we haven't, I should mention that the Bruce GPS part of the project, the strategic project, we have been reporting monthly to you, so you'll remember back to reports that we've been providing on what's going on with the engagement plan and process. So this now will include also a bit of an update on the planning process improvements and the improvements that we're looking at for the communications part of it. In the second page there's a bit of a timeline that shows you how this work is intended to proceed and so on, and I'll just give you a quick overview then of what's been completed to date and what we're planning in the next couple of months or so. The engagement part, the Bruce GPS project, if you want to call it that, that plan has been finalized. The project team received media training. The website is active, and approximately 90 surveys have been completed, and so far I think that number's a bit low because the data is a couple of weeks old in this report already. Social media accounts, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram are up and running. with a continuing growing list of followers and so on. We had the kickoff event on August 15th. Many of you were there, I believe. And we had about 110 people that attended that event. And I think those that were there enjoyed the evening. That particular night and through our 11 pop-up engagements that we've attended so far, these pop-up engagements, just for clarity, we've been appearing with a table at various events. We've been to the Chepstow Homecoming, we've been to the Grand Fondo cycling event in Port Elgin, Tobermory, Wyerton, all over the place, talking to the public, getting their comments directly from them, and passing those on to the consultant. So those have been fairly successful so far. And the consultant is assisting in sort of tabulation and so on of all that information. On the tactical side, which is the process improvements and communications, we have been looking at the report format, trying to do two things. One is to make it a little easier to read and understand, and the other is to try to start using a bit more plain language in some of our reports and so on, so that they're more easily understood generally and by the public. We're identifying things through the planning processes and so on that we can either improve upon, or in some cases may be able to remove from the process entirely if they're not providing value to the client. And again, the client is our councils and the public. We have an obligation now in some situations like the official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments to provide sufficient information in reports and studies, because the new tribunal will be relying more heavily on written information that's presented at a hearing or as part of lead up to a hearing, and so we have to ensure that that's being taken care of appropriately as well. Over the next few months, we have 12 more pop-up engagements planned at various fall fairs, Pumpkin Fest, and there are even a couple that are planned for hockey games and so on, because we know that some of those also draw fairly large crowds and a mixed sort of group of people, so that we want to hear from those folks too. We're working with the member municipalities right now, trying to schedule presentations of what our Bruce GPS project is all about, and make sure that they are aware of what we're doing. And we are also starting to set up stakeholder meetings with farmers, environmentalists, and a number of BIAs and that type of groups to try to get their feedback as well. On the process improvement side, we're continuing to identify opportunities to improve our application efficiencies, and that's a priority for us right now. Staff are investigating an additional or an add-on to our Esri GIS product that would add CityWorks, and this is a database that would be used to keep track of and manage our application information and processes. Some of the benefits from that would be reporting functions and so on, that we could generate reports and notices for public meetings and other things directly through the database itself, with very little hands-on input from our staff, which frees up a bit of time and helps to provide a little bit more efficiency as well. We're completing a project charter for a communications plan. and that will look at, again, some improvements with the communications with local councils, yourselves, as well as the public. And as part of that work, we'll be getting into development of a communications or an engagement guide of some sort that will assist us when we're dealing with the public and trying to improve on our interaction with clients and the public. So that essentially concludes the information report. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
Questions? Paul?
Just to comment on those pop-up tents, I thought it'd be a total waste of time, but I have to renege on that and say I watched them pop that tent up at the Terra Fair there, and right after lunch in a hot day, and I kind of monitored for the afternoon going back and forth because it was kind of like between the washrooms and the beer tent, so it was back and forth. And that, not really, but it was very busy. Amanda was there and she was getting comments from people and lots of stickies were going on the board, so those pop-up tents seem to be, I think the people that are standing there talking with the planners are very interested in what's going on. So, and you'd be at the Ripley Fair, that's the same day as Pumpkin Fest. How are you going to handle that?
Well, we do the best we can, but I know that we did get a report back about the Terra Fair and how successful it was from our perspective too. We got a lot of good comments, and so we want to just keep continuing to do that to make sure that we have heard from the public to the extent that we can. And there is the online tools and so on as well that people can comment to without having to go to a fall fair or something like that. But it's a great opportunity to contact people and get feedback.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Sure, yeah, go ahead, Milt.
Just the whole title of this thing is still, it's confusing, I think, GPS. And I just wish there was some clarity as to what it is that we're doing. And so it's, I know we just finished our process, of course, up north, or tried to, and I mean, it's perceived as trying to cover up something and not calling it really what it is. It's a Bruce County official plan update, right?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the Bruce GPS was what we were previously calling the Bruce Lens, which was to come up with a set of themes or priorities that help guide our decision making when we look at applications. So that is the intent of it. But we also acknowledge through that those themes or priority areas that come up will inform the official plan when we start it, right? And so if you go back to that schedule or timeline, the county official plan is to be initiated in 2019, but we're not denying that the feedback we hear through this process will help guide us and lend some direction to that.
Yeah. It's great, I guess, but I don't think it is, so.
Thanks, Milt. My only comment, I know we should go further. You have 2 years in their schedule for an official plan amendment, and I would question why you would need 2 years to do an official plan. I would just hope that we could do it in much less time than that. We should do it as like I think you would do it, I know most of us have project management training, you would do this as a project and have some I know there's some legislative dates, but 2 years, to me, when you draw a project out over 2 years, you lose interest and relevancy, and pretty soon nobody really cares about it. If you can do that in a compressed time frame, the legislated, you will get, I think, because I think you'll get a better product, because if I'm putting input into it in 2019 and I'm not going to see anything out of it for 2020, worry about it later. Yeah, you know what I mean? I think that's and I know these are just, I'm not going to say anymore. I would just challenge you to say, let's do that in a whole lot shorter period of time.
So just in response to Mr. Chair, I think that when we talk about the process for the official plan, all of us acknowledge we'd like to have it start and be completed in a reasonable time frame. I think what we were trying to do in this is somewhat manage expectations, as there may be supporting studies or things that we need to do ahead of the official plan in order to set us up for success, that those precursors that may need to happen would add to that timeline. So we were trying to sort of manage the expectations, but I think all of us going into it intend to try and move that forward as you noted in the legislative processes as we can in relation to those timelines.
Please. So when we start the official plan in 2019, all the information that we gathered under GPS goes into that draft document.
So I won't say that all the information we gather goes into the draft document. What I'll say is that the information that we gather through Bruce GPS is going to give us a sense of the priority areas we need to focus on in the document. And that through that we would take a deeper dive into those areas and look for how the plan can be updated or improved to address the feedback that we're hearing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same would happen if you were doing a county official plan. Like, instead of engagement, you would prioritize on those issues too. Like, if the name doesn't mean anything. Well, it does to me, but if it was called the Bruce County Official Plan Engagement in 2018, then you would prioritize what you heard, regardless whether, to incorporate into your draft document.
Yeah, just the obligations through the official plan process as it relates to outreach, engagement, soliciting feedback, it is a lot tighter, right? And so in respect to the scope of what we're looking at with the official plan, we felt it was prudent to have a longer engagement process where we were more involved and out there in the public than just a couple of public meetings.
The reason I'm so sensitive for this
yes.
is because every time I get grilled on this, a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just
In 2 years, you could have a new government, a new provincial policy statement, and that's the difficulty with this. And then that's the difficulty when you take such long periods of time to do that. I'm not going to comment anymore. Ann, and I think we'll move on here very shortly.
So if somebody asks, like you get questions, then people at your pop-up tents and everything, the specific information. So if I have a concern about ag lands and the classification of ag lands or size and that, you'll gather that type of information as well. And are you setting the framework at these pop-up tents, or what are the parameters that you set? Is it just kind of wide open?
So through you, Mr. Chair, at the pop-up event, so come and visit us at one. There's 4 questions that we're asking and we're surveying the public on right now. The intent is to scope that down and bring that back to this committee in, I think, about January of next year. So you could see those pieces that have been raised by the public. And that then following that, we would do more outreach on those specific areas to get, drive more detail on what needs to be addressed. A great example is with the ag areas. I think none of us will be surprised that there's going to be an issue in relationship into our rural and agricultural mapping. But that would be one of the things that this committee may want to consider. Something needs to be done in regard to that mapping prior to the official plan process happening. So that's why we tried to be, again, in this project timeline, which is not very detailed at this point, is just to highlight for committee that there may be some things we want to take a deeper dive into and set up for success before we move into the OP process. But the ag rural lands and the mapping, I think, are one that none of us will be surprised when it comes forward, is one for us to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. There is just one other item then. I do want to deal with it now. It shouldn't take very long that we've had some discussion. It's just really informing you about the Conservation Authority and the timelines about their intention to discontinue commenting on natural heritage features. Any questions? If not, then Our next meeting will be October the 18th, 2018, and, sorry.
Before that, there's that act on recommendation.
Oh, sorry, oh, yeah. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is act on recommendations, and I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Ann, seconded by Milt. Any discussion? All in favor? So our next meeting will be October 18th, 2018, and a motion to adjourn. Paul and David. Dan, I know, I know.